Welcome to the Energetic Psyche, a podcast hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell. This week for episode 21, I have Dr. Elizabeth Wisniewski, and we'll be talking about what it was like for her to lose her eyesight during her early 20s and how she made the choice to move into her work as a perinatal chiropractor and birth researcher. I hope you enjoy. All right, welcome to the Energetic Psyche, hosted by yours truly, Dr. Adrian Campbell. This week for episode 21, I have Dr. Elizabeth Wisniewski, and we'll be talking about what it was like for her to lose her eyesight during her early 20s, how she made the choice to move into her work as a perinatal chiropractor and birth researcher. A little bit about Dr. Elizabeth. She is a Webster Plus perinatal certified chiropractor working at the intersection of clinical practice, social justice, and somatics. She's passionate about holistic perinatal education and care for all people. As a person with visual impairment who has experienced over 30 surgeries, she enjoys helping others turn their challenges into assets. Dr. Elizabeth practices currently in Ventura and Santa Barbara, California, as well as virtually. So, Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so glad to have you here.
Thank you. Hey, you're episode 21. It's legal drinking age.
That is true in the U.S. Yeah, that is true. Does that mean today's a party? Like, is that what's happening?
We both have water, but cheers to that.
Right, exactly. I've moved on because, I'm 44 now. So day drinking hits different.
I love it.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Yeah. So thank you for being here. And I figured, why don't we just start with learning a little bit about you, where you came from and how you got here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and it's on the west side of Michigan. And like you mentioned, I'm visually impaired, but when I grew up, I actually could see everything. And when I was going in for a normal pediatrician visit, going into kindergarten, my pediatrician said her retinas look a little bit different when they would use the ophthalmoscope. So my parents started taking me to all these eye doctors all over West Michigan. About a year and a half, they were wanting to do exploratory surgeries. They didn't know what was happening. And I ended up in Detroit, a couple hours away, and got diagnosed with a really rare eye disease, mostly found in boys in the Middle East. And I am neither of those things.
Yeah.
And so that led to a host of surgeries. I'm happy to talk about those and my experiences because it was a lot. And over time, I slowly lost my eyesight. And during that time, my mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had breast cancer 3 different times. And so my freshman year of high school was challenging and a pivotal time in my life where I was a competitive swimmer for 12 years. I was at swim practice, going in for a flip turn, and all of a sudden I just couldn't see the wall. And one of my retinas had detached. And so I had emergency surgery. And then 5 weeks later, my other retina detached and my right eye never recovered. So I never gained vision back. I was wearing glasses. I could read normal size text with my glasses. And then all of a sudden I didn't have my right eye again anymore. And during that time, my mom was slowly transitioning from breast cancer and ended up passing away toward the end of my freshman year of high school. So I had 3 eye surgeries that year, a knee surgery from dislocating it the year prior, but still rowing, crew, and swimming on it. And it was a really hard time.
Yeah.
And just a few things during.
Yeah, just a couple, I can tell that you've done the work and you've told the story a few times because like I have similar stories where it's like blah, 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 blah. And people are like, damn, but like, hang on. Wow.
Yeah. And I can talk about it, and I talk about it a lot because even my patients, my practice members will be like, could you see growing up? And so I have to talk about it a lot, it feels like, but still even now telling it now, I mean, I'm a Cancer sun sign, so I'm very like in tune with my emotions. Yeah. I feel it somatically from my heart to my third eye, where it's like there's emotion there and there's that depth of emotion. And so I can talk about it and feel grounded, but I also like, it's still, it was my experience. And so I'm not disassociated from it. I've worked through it, but always working on it all the time.
And I'm
Um,
sure at different times it hits differently,
yeah,
right? Because, yeah, I mean, even when we do the work, when things are, we've still had the experiences and there's still emotions there. It's not like the emotions go away.
yeah.
Just, yeah.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, especially right now, it's going to be Mother's Day. And then May 19th is the 25-year anniversary of my mom passing away. And I'm like,
Mm,
wow, that's like a big one, too. So there's a
yeah.
lot of that emotion there really present for me. But yes, I'm able to be grounded still and talk about it. But one of the cool things that I love to share is my mom was a special education teacher. And
Mhm.
so after my retinas had both detached and I literally couldn't open my eyes because there was so much physical trauma from the surgeries, I was in geometry, which is a very visual part of math.
Right.
And so with my grandfather, who was a mechanical engineer, they made these pegboards with nails. And so we would create all the shapes with rubber bands, different sizes, so I could feel them and then be like, okay, let's do the Pythagorean theorem through touch. So,
Oh my
what an
goodness.
embodied experience to begin with when I was 14 of learning math that way. And so, my mom, I always feel like really set me up for success later on when I lost most of my vision in my left eye, right? Literally a week after I graduated undergrad at 21, and I had double majored in environmental studies, political science, studied abroad 3 times, took the LSAT, was going to go to law school to be an environmental attorney. And the universe was like, hold up, we're going to do this 30th surgery and you're going to actually lose the rest of the vision you have instead of getting more back. Which now I can laugh, but at the time I was like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that really is what led me into chiropractic is that I was back home in Michigan because I did my undergrad in Missoula, Montana. So I went back to
Okay.
Michigan. Yeah, Montana was awesome.
I've been
Um,
up there. I love Montana.
it was so good, and I'm
Yeah.
glad that I could still see and witness those mountain ranges and
Mm.
in a different way and hold out those memories. Um, but when I after this surgery, I literally heard a commercial for massage school, and I'm like, I'll do that. I've always been good. All my friends wanted foot massages or shoulder massages at undergrad, and I thought, okay, we'll do that for 6 months. I'll get my eyesight back. I always do, and go from there. But 2 weeks in, having never taken anatomy, having a Bachelor of Arts, not science, I said to my dad, thank you for paying for undergrad. I'm going to go in a different direction. I think you meant to be a chiropractor. And he was like, okay. So I went and I did a year of massage schools, almost 1,300 hours, learned
Mhm.
so much anatomy, all these things I had never learned. But then I had to go take actual anatomy and physiology, and then chemistry and statistics and
Right.
physics. And
Right.
obviously very visual, but coming back 7 years prior, my mom had taught me so much. So I took my chemistry exams and did all the equations verbally out loud with my professors.
Oh my
And
goodness.
my dad also had been a special educator, but he ended up becoming an administrator, principal, assistant superintendent, and professor of special ed. So
Mhm.
I have this tool set that was really unique of I know how to advocate for myself. And I also had a social environmental justice background from undergrad. And I'm like, okay, let's look at these course objectives and how can I meet them in a different way? Like, let's build something, let me feel it. And so we created graphs where with thin wood and carved all the lines in it and then put dried noodles for the X and Y axis. So then I could graph things by feeling it.
That is
And so that was,
incredible.
right. And that was all
Yeah.
from my mom. And so I feel like as she was like in that liminal space
Mm.
and transitioning to the other side, she set me up for success for this really hard experience of, I mean, I don't like the word blind, but literally going blind,
Yeah.
becoming visually impaired, that person with visual impairment after 21, almost 22 years of being able to see.
Can I ask you why you don't like the word blind or what the difference is for
Mm,
you between visually impaired and blind?
yeah, I feel like I want to use person centered language as much as possible, being like,
Okay.
hey, I'm a person first. So I'm a person with visual impairment, and it doesn't define me. Like, I'm so much more than my eyes, this
Mm.
entire person with all these lived experiences. And I feel like when we when I hear music or just even in common language and talk, it's like I was blinded by that, the blind leading the blind. And for me, it lands in this really pejorative, kind of sharp way in my body where I'm like, I don't like the way that feels. So how can I use language that helps my, me project this image of like, hey, I'm a person and I've gone through this experience. We've all had experiences as people. So I don't
Yeah.
want to be labeled like that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And because I mean, I'm always just trying to understand more about the way that people, well, like the episode with Kaki we talked about a minute ago, right? Words matter and the way that we apply them. And I think too often we decide how words should be used for other people without taking the time to explore what it means to them.
Yeah.
But it makes like perfect sense as you were explaining it, because it's like being a tall person versus a person who's tall. Like, I know this is not a direct correlation, so please don't take it. Like, I'm like, it's no big deal.
But that lands because my youngest stepbrother is 6'8", and so everybody's always like, "How tall are you? Do you play basketball? Are you in the NBA?" And like, he rode crew for Team USA, so he's awesome. And that's like always how he's defined. But it's like, no, he actually has his like master's in synthetic biology and does all these other courses.
Yeah. And so like, yeah, we can apply that across, all kinds of descriptors. But thank you. I appreciate you explaining that for me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, that's kind of like how I landed in chiropractic, is that I feel like it called to me, and it was that deep call in my body of, you're okay, you can pivot. And now, having gone through Pacifica, as you know, all that environmental, like we did eco-psychology classes, and I'm like, I read all of this when I was 18 in my environmental studies program, and now I'm reading it from a depth psychological lens. And I'm doing perinatal work, reproductive justice work. That's really similar within that vein of social justice, environmental justice, and an excessive burden on a group of people. And so I'm doing this work in a similar way, and it's really cool how it's all constellated together for me, where seemingly at the time, like, disconnected of, I have an environmental studies degree and everybody else in Chiro has biology or physiology or something. And now I'm like, that's a really cool perspective I have now. So I'm grateful.
Yeah, so both of us went to Pacifica, which I didn't mention at the beginning of this, but I think you were in Kaki's year, correct?
I was the year below Kaki, so I was starting when you were in your third.
Yeah, that's right. Which is why we didn't chat very much, because we were in very different phases. But I came in, I was teaching electronics and nuclear power when I started at Pacifica. And everyone was like, and there were quite a few people actually who were, I'm pretty sure they were like, you're Satan. Like, you work for the man and you're destroying the planet. And I was just like, okay. And then they're like, wait, you were in the military too? And I'm like, oh God. Yeah. But like now I can look back and see how it all came together. And I think for a lot of us that end up at Pacifica, it's like that, because the numinous calls us there, and we're some of the few that listen.
Yeah. And like when I was listening to Kaki's interview, she talked about how she committed to schools without ever visiting. And I was laughing because I committed to Montana. I committed to Palmer West in San Jose, California, and then Pacifica. And what's so silly is that I literally was living and practicing in Santa Barbara, and I didn't go to Pacifica's campus until the first day of class. I'm very third eye, and that's what brought me into chiropractic. When I said that to my dad didn't hesitate or flinch, because, and we've obviously talked a lot about this over the years, like, he was like, yeah, that makes sense. And then later on, my dad and my stepmom have been like, we didn't really ever see you as an attorney, so this is a better route.
Yeah.
So I know it's meant to be, and I really trust that third eye intuition more than my physical eyes. Like, my third eye is so clear. It's better than 20/20.
And see, and I'm a very body intuitive person, because I think my have a lot of racing thoughts and they just kind of like go all over the place. So sometimes my third eye intuition can be challenged. Whereas somatically, like I was about to enroll in the organizational psych program at Cal State Long Beach.
Oh, wow.
And I remember filling out the application and just being like, I really don't want to do this. There has to be something else. And I like Googled master's programs in California.
Yeah.
And Pacifica popped up, and they were having an Experience Pacifica weekend where you go and, you know, listen to teachers and eat at the dining hall. And I mean, within an hour, I was like, I'm going to school here. And they're like, well, it's a master's PhD. And I'm like, I don't care. I'll get a PhD. That's cool. Like I had no plans of getting a PhD, but I was like, whatever. I just want to go here. Like, can I just be here? Because my body feels good here.
Yeah, absolutely. I know, you just feel it. And it's like, yeah, that's that call. And like the hero's journey, it always begins with a call. And so are you going to listen? Are you going to take the call? Or are you going to be like, I'm going to send you to voicemail? Deal with that later.
Right. I'll listen to that later. I like that.
So I choose to pick up typically and go with it. And this is where we are. We both have PhDs from Pacifica.
I know. Check it out. What do you know? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So you were at Pacifica and you started to see like the bigger picture of how everything was coming together and your path was kind of being laid out.
Yeah. I mean, I was already in practice. I've been a doctor of chiropractic since 2012 and was on this journey toward perinatal practice. And backing up, peri means around. So like the periosteum is like that gristle around the bone. So perinatal is preconception, prenatal, postpartum. It's that whole continuum. So I think that's important to define. So as Webster go ahead.
So can I ask you then? So if it's preconception, then is it only for women who are interested in conceiving, or is perinatal for any female body?
I mean, typically people who are in that preconception will come to me like, I've been trying to get pregnant or I'm considering it. So we'll do some herbs, some supplements, mindset, meditation, maybe some yoga.
Got it.
And I'll adjust them because chiropractic isn't about back pain. It's about your nervous system, and your nervous system controls everything. So if you're in fight or flight, freeze, fodder, I always say pick your F word or pick you. We don't have to live there. You can come into your parasympathetic nervous system. You're not going to get pregnant if you're all like, I'm in fight or flight.
Right? The body's like, not a safe space, not a safe space.
My mantra with my patients is, shoulders are not earrings. And so we constantly use that. I'm like, let's learn to breathe. So a lot of people come to me with that or during that. But I mean, and I have an urgent patient right after this, breech baby presentation. And that's where Webster comes in. It's an analysis of the sacrum, the sacred bone at the bottom of the spine. And when there's misalignment there and torsion in the pelvis, then it's often hard for the baby to be in an optimal position. And so I was trained in that technique in 2013. And then this is kind of wild. When I was writing my dissertation during the pandemic, still practicing in person because I was allowed to, I did 3 other trainings in perinatal psychology, the perinatal chiropractic certification, and became a registered somatic movement therapist. Like, and I did a postpartum doula training.
So can I just say, like, I think you might be one of the very first people or very few people that's ever made me look like a slacker. Like I'm just saying. Most people look at me and are like, how are you doing all these things? But like, girl.
I'm always on that mission. I'm turning 40 in 2 months from today. And I'm like, when I look back, I'm like, wow, I've done a lot in 39 years. Like, what am I going to do the next 39? And don't let anything stop me. But I really just went for it during the pandemic. I mean, and really what brought me to my research is that, we're always looking for that gap in the literature. And I didn't know what I was going to write about for dissertation. But then I had this influx in new practice members who were postpartum, had an unplanned, unwanted, maybe unnecessary cesarean birth. And I was noticing they weren't touching their scar. They wouldn't engage with the lower half of their body. So from this depth psych perspective, I was like, ooh, Dionysus is here. There's dismemberment. And
Yeah.
how can I help them remember themselves and their soma, their body, their experience? And so I got really curious. And when I went in, nobody within depth psychology or somatics had talked about, not a lot about birth, but nothing about cesarean birth. And
Mhm.
that's what called me in into that incision. And so that's where my research was born out of my actual clinical practice. And it was, I mean, it was like having abdominal surgery, writing my dissertation. It was a lot of work and
Yeah.
recovery. Yeah,
So I'd love to hear more about your dissertation.
sure. So it was a lived experience of cesarean birth from a cross-cultural perspective, and I did interpretive phenomenological analysis, IPA, like the beer. Feel like I sound like I drink a lot, but I really don't. So, so I used that, and I interviewed people, and so there's hermeneutics as part of it, but also we're making meaning of the participant, the person I'm interviewing, and their meaning-making experience. So there's this actual double hermeneutic and phenomenology, and as well as ideography, so looking at the symbols. And those are the main tenets of IPA methodology. So I interviewed 9 people who had done on-plan cesarean birth, and I really choose saying cesarean birth or CV over C-section because you're still giving birth, and there's so much shame around not having a quote natural birth,
Right.
really implying vaginal is natural and the only option.
Well, and I also hear in the word C-section that
Mhm.
dismemberment that you were just talking
Mhm.
about, right?
Yeah,
Because
it
we're
was like
sectioning the
that.
body. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And what's so cool, there's these new trends coming out of that. My dog's literally pushing all the chairs away under the table if you hear that noise. But there's these new trends called family centered or gentle cesarean birth. And then there's an even newer trend out of Australia called maternal assisted, where the child bear is actually pulling the baby out of that incision site and up to their chest. So there's
Wow.
more and more involvement. So
Yeah.
I see that as a way as remembering, as not dissecting and dismembering as much, in keeping that dyad of the child bearer and the baby more
Mhm.
intact as much as
Mhm.
possible. So I really think those are some beautiful trends. But some of the findings that came out of it, because I went deep into the history of obstetrics and gynecology, which was horrific. Like the chainsaw was invented to cut the pubic bone to make it easier for the doctor to deliver the baby.
Oh my God.
Right?
Oh my
Doesn't it
God.
like you and your body and like hurt? So I
Oh my gosh. Wow.
yeah. So there's a history we don't talk about.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, oh my gosh, it's so much abuse and violence right there. And then Dr. Marion Sims, who's lionized as the founder and the father of obstetrics and gynecology, was practicing on his enslaved women behind his house up to 30 times a procedure. He invented things like the speculum. So there's no consent. And so then we look today that Black women are dying at 3 to 4 times the rate of during childbirth in the United States. New York City, it's 12 times the rate as
Oh my
compared to white
goodness.
women. And where does this come from? Well, it's institutionalized racism, literally coming from the founding father of gynecology. So I'm really deep into that. And that's where, I already have this history of social and environmental justice. And when I was reading this and I was feeling like right now, I just feel it feels terrible in my body to talk about, but it's important because it's so violent. I'm like, oh, this is where all my work is reconnecting.
Yeah.
Yep.
Man,
So,
that's incredible. I always like so many of these episodes because I learned so much from my guests. Like, I,
mhm.
it always goes in an area where I'm like, whoa, did not see that coming. And also, this is amazing. Like,
Mhm.
yeah,
Well,
that's
people are like,
incredible.
oh, you work with babies and pregnant people all day. And I'm like, birth work is death work, it's grief work. There's so much grief around birth within the whole continuum. And it's really hard work, and there's a lot of trauma.
Yeah.
And so I love it because my Instagram, yeah, I'll show like me adjusting a baby, and it's really gentle and cute. And they do amazing because they don't often have, hopefully, as much trauma. Like sometimes they do as an adult, and they unwind, but there's no placebo, I find, and that's why I find they respond better to care and faster, which is really cool. Kind of like people who do animal chiropractic as well. Like there's not a placebo. They're not all in their head. They're like, oh, I'm gonna receive this as long as I feel safe. So
Well,
yeah,
and
there's a lot of it.
you know what else I was thinking too is that I think like as a culture, we have a inclination to avoid and ignore things that are dark or scary or heavy or have feelings that are uncomfortable. And so I would assume, and you can tell me if I'm right here, that that's one of the biggest reasons that when we think of birth, we're like, yay, pink and light blue and everything's happy and yay, babies. And like in some of the research that I've done, like mine is really focused on how we somaticize unacknowledged grief. And like one of the examples I give is like when we give birth, right? And grieving, it isn't given space because we're supposed to be so freaking happy about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And when I encourage my practice members, I'm like, when I meet with them for their initial consult, I'm like, do you have a doula? Are you in therapy? Because those are the things that are going to help the most, more than anything I can do. Because I'm like, when you're in labor, all that stuff from the past is going to come up from your childhood. And I've been there where there hasn't been disclosure from a patient to me or midwives that there was sexual trauma. And labor stalls and it can completely stop because we're shutting down that part of our body where we've been wounded and traumatized, and we're holding there, and the baby gets stuck. So that's why it's so important. You're so right with that. Like birth it's that liminal space. And then our culture and society is like, but you have a baby with 10 fingers and 10 toes. You should be fine. Just get over it. And we push that down when we used to sit in circle and talk about our birth because that's how you make meaning of it. And all the research supports tell your birth story, write about it, draw it, paint it, whatever you can do to process it.
God, I think that's all so beautiful. And it's one of the, like I said, it just reminds me of like how when we ignore the darkness, we're ignoring the entirety and the wholeness of our experience. Right. And so being able to tell that story, you have to be able to connect with and access the whole story.
Absolutely. And then when you're listening, if you're listening to somebody telling their birth story, you don't want to be like, that's trauma. And I'll hear stories and they're not connecting that. And in my body, I'm like, oh my gosh, I am so sorry. Like, what can we do? But you just gotta like witness. And be there with it and let them connect that and make meaning. And it will happen over time. But that's why I'm like, tell me, if you're my patient, I'm like, tell me your story every time. Like, I'm just going to listen and hold space because I know things will shift. It's like what Jung talks about with holding the tension of opposites.
Right.
We hold, we're pulling, and eventually a third thing will emerge.
Yep. So I'm curious in your opinion. So with like in a lot of my research around like the somatization of unacknowledged grief, what's come up is that it often contributes to or leads to symptoms of depression. And so do you think there's a correlation between postpartum depression and women not being able to access the grief or the darker parts of their story?
I think there definitely could be. I mean, if you have a family history of depression and anxiety, you definitely are at a higher risk. But what I think is interesting, if you're in a partnership, if you're experiencing like a PMAD type, like postpartum depression or anxiety, your partner has a 1 in 2 chance of also then having that.
Oh, wow.
So it's in the field. I mean, and that's stated clearly in the literature in multiple places now. So that's what we're talking about. But I definitely with that history and that holding, I've witnessed that in my clinical practice. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'll send people to acupuncture and I'm like, hey, I'm not an acupuncturist. I know a few big meridians, but here's your lung meridian. That's where you hold grief. Have that work done when you go to see your acupuncturist prenatally because it feels like you're holding here. And also, we need your lung meridian flowing because I need you to breathe.
Right.
So I absolutely think we hold those patterns of tension and that can manifest then later down the road because we're not processing, we're not going into it.
Yeah, exactly. like in some of the research, they say just the word depressed, right, shows that that something is being pressed down,
Right.
pushed aside, and like when we let go of the anger and we roll into that helpless space, it's no longer trying to get out. It's just existing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that reminds me of my field work between the first and second year at Pacifica. And I was leading these blindfolded, I called them on retreats because retreat is like moving backwards. And then a lot of the antonyms just didn't land right, where it was like forging. I'm like, this sounds really intense. So I called them on retreats, and it was blindfolded yoga and meditation and painting to have people drop more into their bodies. And so that the D hyphen press reminds me of the retreat or regressing, because I hear stories from doulas how somebody might regress during labor and start talking like a child, let's say, because they had some traumatic experiences medically as a child. And that wasn't addressed in somatic based therapy or any sort of therapy. So then you go back into that state.
Right. That's crazy. All right. Well, thank you for that. This is what happens when you get two depth psychology people together. We just go down those little rabbit holes of dark and beautiful things. Yeah.
I know. My moon's in Scorpio, so I'm always like, let's do it.
And I'm a Sagittarius, so I'm like, I'm on board. Where are we going? Another adventure.
I love it. It's so
my
good.
God. So tell me more, if you will, about your work as a perinatal chiropractor and like what makes your practice different. I mean, obviously being visually impaired, I'm sure you connect more to your intuition. Well, I know because we've talked about it. So I'm just curious, like, how is a session with you maybe different?
Yeah. So I spend a lot more time with people. I don't just like crack their spine and send them out the door. We drop in. I want to know what's going on. And I'm always like checking in physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I give them a lot of resources. It's trauma informed, it's gender informed, somatically informed. And you'll see on my webpage, it even's like, I'm an anti-racist, anti-ableist. So really just like open to people coming in and being themselves in their full embodied expression or not, whatever it needs to be. And I don't do anything cookie cutter. There's over 200 techniques in chiropractic, and I know about 10. Plus, I went to massage school for a year. So I mainly use my hands. I'm like old school chiropractic. I'm always like, I don't need anything. I can work on like a picnic bench in my hands. Like that's all I need. So, and just so you never have the same session with me more than once, because I always am like, you're dynamic and changing. And even the way I address consent is different. And this came out of my research too. So what I'll say, I'm like, consent for me is ongoing, and consent can end at any time for any reason or for no reason at all. So, especially within obstetrics, we see a lack of consent often that leads to a cascade of intervention, leading to cesarean birth frequently. That's, 32% of the time. So, it's important for me to provide trauma informed care that is very consent based, and that's at the forefront of my practice. And I see entire families. And so, I'll have babies nursing while I'm gently adjusting them. And it's just like if you're testing tomato, if it's ripe, or touching your own eyelid, that's the pressure. That's all that's needed. And then I'll like go back and forth and work on mom. And so it's this like family centered practice. It's fun. It gets wild. I get thrown up on. There's stuff everywhere. It gets a little wild some days, but it's fun because I wanted to make it a positive experience. And then I have all these pregnancy pillows. And so I work on people, like a lot of midwives and doulas will be like, this person's water just released. Can you work on them? And so I'll see people in the early stages of labor, sometimes in active labor, which is a really special place to be with them while they're crossing that threshold.
Yeah.
So it's a lot different. It's not just like general back pain. Like I'm with them during some of the highest highs and lowest lows. And having that depth psychological somatic perspective, I really truly believe sets me apart. Plus, I've done a lot of extra training in perinatal psychology. So giving voice to a baby who had a traumatic birth so they can maybe complete their journey to the breast and not recapitulate their trauma. And so babies that maybe had like a cord wrap around their neck, you start working on them and they'll start shaking and the parents are like, oh my gosh. I'm like, that's a great thing. Think about a dog gets groomed and then they have the zoomies. They release that back. A
Mhm.
deer quivers. We don't do that as humans. We're like, I'm fine. I'm going to repress this. This
Right.
baby's trying to let go of the trauma.
Gosh, I
So,
just keep getting the goosebumps while you're talking. Like,
yeah, it's fun. I mean, it's
yeah,
a puzzle all day long for me. I'm like, how does this, what do I need to release to help this? And then I'm also like, I'm not curing you. I'm advocating and facilitating your innate intelligence, your healing,
yeah.
and that's all you. And so I empower people. I don't want to, I'm like, I would love to see you every day, but I don't need to, and you don't have time either. I'm going to give you a lot of tools so that you feel empowered in your healthcare because this is your body and your lived experience.
Yeah, and I work the exact same way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's all about empowering and helping people find their own agency, and I think, like, we were talking about, that ongoing consent is so important, because just because somebody's okay with something right now doesn't mean they're okay with it in 10 minutes, 10
Yeah.
days, 10 months. And reminding them of that just increases that connection to their own self-agency,
Yeah.
which in our culture, we struggle with so much, especially I think as women, right? Because
Mhm.
we've come a long way, but oh my goodness, we got so much further to go.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah,
I even ask babies for consent and like you just feel it in your body.
yeah,
Like, and if it's not the right time, I'll be like, hey, why don't you try feeding your baby and we'll come back. And I know that if the mom is dysregulated or, upregulated in their nervous system, I'm like, can I just massage your shoulders for a moment while you sit here with your baby? Because then we can have this place of coherence and co-regulation. And so that way I can help the baby in like a surrogate type way.
right.
And so that's kind of how I move with it. So there's nothing prescribed and the consent, like you said, so vitally important.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, having that PhD in somatic depth psychology,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know how it informs my practice, and I don't do anything near as physical as you do. And it just, not to sound cliche, but it adds so much depth to the work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and because I mean, it just does, it expands everything.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, God, it's beautiful, Elizabeth. Like, it sounds like your practice is just a really full and rich
Mm-hmm.
um experience.
It definitely is. And it teaches me so much too about my own boundaries because as a healthcare provider, I give a lot. And then I'm like, oh, wow, like I'm burning down to my thumb. I should probably get worked on. So tonight I'm getting a massage. Like, and
Right.
so it's a constant reminder to be like, you need to stay in your body and your experience and like not take on other people's energy. And I have some tools that I've cultivated over the years for that too that I love to teach because it's challenging when you're like doing hands-on healing. It's like, and people come in and they're like blah 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 blah. I'm like, whoa, boundaries.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
I'd love to hear more about your social justice work.
Okay. Yeah. So in undergrad, I'll start there.
Mhm.
I studied abroad one summer in Guatemala, studying environmental justice and sustainable development. Then the next winter in Brazil, studying organic agriculture. And then the next summer in Nicaragua, doing environmental justice. And I was on the board of a couple nonprofits by the time I was 19. So we worked throughout the Americas and even on the Blackfoot Reservation in Montana. So just really passionate about all people having access and having their needs met and having equity and inclusion. And so now that manifests as I'll provide pro bono work and do some consulting, but I really try to not have finances be a burden on people because I don't take insurance. And so I do it that way. And then also teaching in the community for different organizations, some of my research, because I feel like as this cisgendered heterosexual white woman, that it's not on anybody else to teach me about obstetric racism and violence. I went into the literature and read it myself, and now I'm teaching it to other providers. And
Nice.
that's a big thing because we can't shift this paradigm if the providers don't know about it and what's going on in the history. Because, like, I wasn't taught this in anything in my chiropractic school where obstetrics was. They're like, here's a specula. I'm like in our OBGYN class. I'm like, cool. So for me, it really comes out in doing interviews like this, writing, poetry, music, but really teaching. And that's more and more where I'm moving into to bring, first off, awareness, and moving from there, from that place of awareness.
Nice. And do you have any plans for a book, or have you written a book yet?
I was at the end of my defense for my dissertation, I was offered a book deal with Routledge, and I still haven't done it because, my dissertation was 401 pages, and I was like, I need a moment.
I totally understand. It took me like 2 years to get over it.
Yeah, it was so much. And then I moved myself in my practice 6 months ago, 30 miles away. So I'm like finally starting to write again and write poetry and music. So I'm moving back into that space now that I feel grounded where I am. So
Yeah.
I will do that. I have published articles in the past, and I've been doing a lot of podcasts and just getting some of my research out there right now. And I also teach continuing education for the Cal Chiro Association. So I'm doing some things.
Yeah, no, and the
Yeah.
only reason I ask is because this
Yeah.
stuff is so interesting. And I mean, and like I said, I understand it took me like 2 years to get over being done with the dissertation, and people are always asking me, do you have a book? Do you have a book? Or what book was it that you were talking about? And I'm like, oh, like the one I didn't write yet? Yeah, that one. I'm working on it. So I get it, but I still had to ask because it is so interesting and it is so different than, the other stuff that's out there right now.
Absolutely. I will do it. I'm putting it out there in the universe. It's going to happen.
I believe in you.
You got a year and a half out from my defense. So I'm in a better place now because my dissertation was over 400 pages and it was just a lot of work. So.
Yeah. No, I get you, girl.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. And I think I was similar in like the way I got back into working with words was through poetry and art and fiction and back to silly books. And because for a while I was just like, I just don't want to read ever again. Done forever.
When you're like mandated 1,000 pages a month in between sessions, it's like, okay, and you have a job.
Yeah. I had a full-time like jobby job up until I think I was in the second or third year of my PhD.
Oh my gosh.
And I finally was like, I can't, like, if I keep doing this, it's going to take me twice as long to finish my PhD because it takes so much focus. So I left the corporate jobby job, started my own company so I could have more flexibility.
I love that.
But
then you work more hours.
But at least I choose when. That's what matters. I might work, but I'm working until midnight because I choose to, not because that's the only time I have.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And so speaking of starting companies, we also talked about a new venture that you have coming up in femtech.
So I've been working on this for the past year. Its working name up until a week ago was Blood Moon. But then my business partner and I decided that really wouldn't translate well in all cultures, and we want to make this accessible. So it's named Diane after my mom and the Roman goddess of the hunt and moon, Diana, and it's spelled D-Y-A-N. So it's Diane and me, and the me is menstrual empowerment. So we're creating this app that has not only somatics and rituals built into it, but it's going to have consent-based sharing and the highest end security of any menstrual tracking app so that it's locally stored and that nobody has access to your data, not even us as a company. So it's going to create this really safe and sacred place to attune with your womb and for your partner or whoever you're in relationship with, maybe your child, to, share through consent ongoing consent, where you're at in your cycle. This is really different than anything else out there. And we're going to hopefully have the beta version out by International Women's Day, so March 8th of 2025. And I'm so excited because my business partner is in tech and he'll use all these acronyms. I'm like, whoa, 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 slow down. I'm just a doctor. I don't know what that means.
I love that. I'm just a doctor. I don't know what these things mean.
I have 2 doctor degrees. No idea what you're talking about right now. So it's fun. I'm learning a lot. So that's what I do for fun. So my business partner we've been friends for a long time, over a decade, and we met in Santa Barbara, but he's currently living in Bali. So like you were saying, like midnight, we were working until almost 1 a.m. Pacific time this weekend.
Yeah.
And then I responded with a voice memo at 4:30 in the morning on WhatsApp to him, like a full voice memo. And the next day I was like, whoa. And it was on like copy for our webpage. So constantly working on that because I'm really excited to help empower people around their cycle. And our tagline is for the bleeders and the people that love them. So this is bringing in
I love that.
relationships, because when I was looking at my Apple cycle I like how I said psyche. Apple
Right.
Psyche tracking app, very interesting for I'm like, oh, this data, like who cares about half of this? And I'm a perinatal doctor saying that. So I saw the gap, just like I saw the gap in the literature for my research. And I was like, oh, we can do so much better. And I can bring in my trauma informed holistic perinatal expertise into femtech in a really different way, along with the depth psych and the somatics. So that's where Diane and me is coming from.
I just have to say that I love the phrase "attuned to your womb." Like, I think that is lovely. And this is great. So I have been interested in, like, I'll just say I've tried tracking my cycle. I don't know how many times over the last few years. And all of the electronic trackers I've tried didn't work out for one reason or another. Now, I haven't gone and spent money on a specific like menstrual cycle tracker because I wasn't that into it. I was wanting to use something that was already there. I've tried my planner. I've tried the calendar on my phone. I mean, so many different things. And, it never really did work out. And there was always a little bit of hesitancy in like, how is this information going to be used? And like, I'm just sharing my menstrual cycle info with Fitbit. That's a little weird. Like that you're going to take this information. Am I going to start getting ads of like chocolate cake now at a certain time every month? I don't know. And also like, I really love that it's not just about the person experiencing the cycle, but the people who are close to her, because I'm 44 now, I'm perimenopausal, and I'm just now getting into a space where like talking about my cycle isn't like, oh my God, right? Like weird and whatever. Because for most of my life, it was like gross and ew. And, we don't talk about those things, but now things are changing. And I think it's so important for women's health. And now that I'm moving into perimenopause, tracking my cycle is even more important because things are getting a little weird. And hormones are getting crazy. And the people who are close to me, like it increases their safety.
I like that perspective.
Right? Like I was telling my boyfriend the other day, I was like, when all this started really kicking off, my doctor was like, well, you just need to tell the people close to you that you may be going crazy, but at least you see it. Because most women don't, and they should just count their blessings. And I was like, so you're lucky. Just feel lucky about yourself.
Bringing that awareness, absolutely. It's so important. And to like, because I had such a, I want to share a quick story, if I may, about my first period, because it involves my mom. And so the house we built when I was a baby, we were still living in at the time, and had this bathroom downstairs, but that's like where all the animals were. So I went down there in the morning and I was like, something's wrong. So I was down there a long time, and I realized I was bleeding. And we had Labradors, we had gerbils. So I come upstairs and my mom is in the kitchen ironing my dad's shirt. And I'm like looking at her and I'm kind of crying. And she looks down at me and she goes, did your gerbil die? And I was like, what? No. And then I was all like, did my gerbil die? And I was like, I started my period. And then she was like, oh my gosh, let's go in the bathroom. And like we talked about it. And she's like, my mom told me nothing. And I was so afraid. And so she gave me like products and taught me all about them. Because sex ed doesn't really teach anything. It's like, here's
Yeah.
a banana, here's a condom, but like, okay, cool. And nothing real. We learn more. We were talking about this with some of I basically exclusively hang out with birth workers. So we're always talking about this stuff. Like, we'll learn about these things, like how to put a tampon in correctly. So she let me stay home from school that day, which she never let me do. And it was more of a ceremony and a ritual. So I've been researching and reading all about rituals from around the world about your first period and what it looks like and how it can be really celebrated. So that's where that education comes from, because it doesn't have to be taboo. And we can practice cultural humility and learn from each other. And so that's a big part of Diane and me as well. Moving forward is bringing in those experiences, because we all have that first period story. And just like birth, we should probably share it and make meaning of it, because it can shift our perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that, the cultural humility, right? And I think that's where we're getting better as an American culture. Not all, but some of us are getting better at, like, maybe we're not the best at everything. And like, let's look into other places and see how they do it, and what can we learn from them, and what can they share, or what can we share with them, not in like a forced way, but like a, hey, would you like to try this? And like sharing with each other. And I, as a 44-year-old woman, just looking at like the younger generation today and the way that they're processing, and like the fact that there's period parties now, right? Like, I mean, God, it's just so cool. Like, I'm just so stoked about it. And like, oh, it makes me a little teary. I'm not gonna lie, because it's just so awesome. And I think there's part of me that's probably a little jealous, I won't lie, but not in a bad way. Just in like I'm so freaking happy for you guys that you get to experience this. And like that, when you're in your 20s and 30s, you'll be able to talk with your partner, your husband, boyfriend, whatever, and be like, oh yeah, I'm on my cycle this week, blah, 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 blah. And this is what it means for me. And this is how you can support me. And, this, that, and the other. Like, just beautiful that the world is becoming that place. Like, I just love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it should be celebrated. It's like a time for us to go inward and like not only attuning with the womb, but with the moon, and to practice whatever self-care rituals we need to do at the time. Taking a bath, taking a breath. I mean, it's hard. I'm moving bodies, and I'll be on my period. I'm like, inside, I'm like, this sucks. I need a break. And so I'm like, how can I change my schedule as a provider? And if I'm able to better track where I'm at in my cycle, then can I shift my schedule to practice more self-care? Like, what a concept.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And like, that's all the work I do with my clients for the most part, is like raising self-awareness so that you can better support yourself.
Yeah.
Like,
how else can you give back?
Right. You got to figure out what's going on first so that you know how to support yourself. But, we often will skip that initial self-awareness phase and jump straight to like, well, I heard if I do this, it'll be good. Or this was on Instagram, and so that's what I'm going to try.
You have to take painkillers and like numb it and not be in relationship with it. And I'm a chiro. I'm like, well, maybe some turmeric, but like, or something. But let's go into that. And that's the depth psych too, of like, I'm so curious. What's going on with your uterus? Like, I talked to my uterus like this weekend. I was like, okay, we're done. This was a good bleed. I was like, great bleed. Okay, I'm good now. Like, get it all out. We're done.
Wrap it up, kid.
I mean, I affirm my immune system too. All my friends know this out loud. I'll be like, I have such a strong immune system. My immune system's amazing. I
tell my body that kind of stuff too, especially because I have a good amount of chronic pain, because I've broken a lot of bones. I've torn a lot of stuff. And so often I'll be like, I know. You've lived a rough life, but you've done a good job. I'm so proud of you. Look how you just went up those stairs. Look at you go.
Yeah. It's awesome. You got to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's really important to like talk to yourself. Like that's part of my ritual. Like I'm doing sage spray and rosewater spray, and I'm like calling in all my guides and like talking out loud. And even my dog lets me sage him because he knows. He's like, oh yeah, this is our ritual. So
I was just saging my dogs last night. I found a sage lavender spray I made. I was like, ooh, this smells good. I'm like, girl, come here. You want some? They're like, yeah.
I love that.
Oh
so
my God.
funny. They know. They get it
Yeah.
though, because it's energy. Like everything's energy. And it's like I talked about the babies. Like they'll receive if you're in this good co-regulated state and down-regulated nervous system, they will receive just like our animals, just like our wombs.
Yeah. And it's just getting past all of those blocks that we create and put in place, right? Mm-hmm. Whether conscious or unconscious.
Yeah.
Often we're the ones putting all that stuff there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We definitely are.
We're so powerful. We're so powerful.
Yeah. So dropping back in, shoulders are not earrings, attuning with yourself, your womb if you have one, whether you're breathing or not, and just being present with each moment and each breath.
I love that. I've picked up so many beautiful one-liners from you today. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, I'm so excited to use that. Right? Shoulders are not earrings. Oh my gosh. Attune with your womb.
You need to attune with your womb.
I love it. Oh my gosh. Well, we're getting close to the end of our time, my dear. So what I usually ask before we wrap up is if there was one thing that you just wanted to make sure to share with everyone, or one thing you wanted people to know, what would it be?
I would say to trust your wisdom, however that materializes or manifests, whether it's through your intuition, your third eye, your heart, you feel it in your bones. Trust that and trust your body, your soma, your lived experience. There's so much wisdom in there. We're not just a body. Like we are full of 70 trillion cells with intelligence in every single cell. So listen to that. Tune into the vibration, the frequencies of your cells, your soma, your soul, your psyche, and go for it. Like reach for, I'll say, if you only love me to the moon and back, it's not enough. Like I need more. So like reach for the cosmos after you've tuned in. You got this.
Oh, I love it. That was beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. This is so fun.
I know, wasn't it? I know. I was so hesitant to put this podcast on. I'm not going to lie. And I have such a great time with everybody. And I learned so much from my guests. And oh my gosh, this has been awesome. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth. We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. So we'll say our goodbyes to everybody. And I will post all of her information for her website and everything else in the text of the post. So look for it. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much for joining us on the Energetic Psyche, a weekly podcast that live streams every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Central Time. We hope you'll join us again in the future. Have a great week.